Do this.
Jestem bardzo zaszczycony, że jestem
Mariana is somewhere.
Marianna jest tutaj. She's here.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Dziękuję za zaproszenie.
Very much.
Naprawdę bardzo.
And then I want to presume to speak for all of us.
I zakładam, że mówię w imieniu nas wszystkich.
I want to say to those of you who are here, everyone who has played a role in making this amazing event happen so flawlessly. All of you, lifeguards, registration people, cooks, the food has been so amazing. All of you, you haven't spared any detail to make us all so comfortable and have such an awesome time. So thank you all, wherever you are. Really well done. Our school helped to organize an EUDEC, International Democratic Education Conference, some years ago, so I know how much pressure, how much work. Wow. Yeah, so thank you. Now, I guess I'm going to start right out I was supposed to talk about breaking rules. And I just learned that, so I'm going to start out by breaking rules. I came prepared to talk about something, and I was asked many months ago to talk about raising kids with trust and respect. So that's what I'm going to talk about. And the writer in me, I was so delighted when I heard that was one of the themes of the conference, because the writer in me, sees it's like a really good book title that gives you, clues you into the essence of the book, in just a few words. And what I like about the theme, trusting and respecting children, is that it signals people immediately that the core values of democratic education are radically different from the core values of the conventional model, where, as we all know, I don't need to go on about this, but we all know, so much attention is paid to worrying about whether kids are learning a very narrow range of academic skills, information, as fast as all the other kids their age. Instead of spending time, nurturing the building blocks of real intelligence, maturity, becoming world citizens, right? We're in another world here, and so I like that. So, we don't have much time. I think, we okay? Okay, well, that's not much time. It's a little complicated, but. So I think that the writer in me also wants to start by pointing out that trust and respect are actually very close synonyms. Okay, and let me read you the definition. Let me read you the definition from an English dictionary. So trust, a belief that someone or something is reliable, good, honest, effective, etc. Respect, a feeling of admiring someone or something that is good, valuable, important, etc. Okay, so you see that the two words actually are almost identical. So from now on, actually, I'm just going to say trust to save a little time. But I mean trust and respect. Okay. So, and then what I want to do together is I want to address two basic questions, simple questions. First, why do the societies in which all of us live tend so strongly not to trust children? And why should we trust them? Okay. Now, my answers aren't so simple. I just want to say that I think if you want to get anywhere meaningful talking about a subject so complex as children,
tak złożone, jak
how they develop, how they really develop. You have to look holistically at many different levels of existence. So, I guess I'll start at the top,
Zacznę od góry,
but with the spiritual level.
od duchowego.
But then I want to make sure we all understand that this idea that there's a hierarchy of the levels, right?
Hierarchię poziomu.
No, that's an illusion.
To jest iluzja, że
They're all the same. They all work together.
wszystkie są
But anyway, spiritually speaking,
współpracują. Duchowo biorąc,
there's an enormous,
jest niezwykła,
but kind of very underlying source of this kind of distrust I want to talk about.
źródło braku zaufania, które się wydarza wobec zaufania.
My country, America, Poland,
Polska,
I think every European country, every country in the European Union,
czy też każdy kraj europejski,
we're all predominantly Christian societies, right?
również są dominującą chrześcijańskimi
And the Christian belief that children come into the world tainted with original sin
dziecko przychodzi na świat z pierwotnym grzechem.
is a huge source of this distrust.
Wiele źródło po prostu braku zaufania.
I don't know how it happened. I don't know how it's played out here in Poland. My first time here.
Jestem tu pierwszy raz.
But in my country, you can trace the problem right back to the beginning. You go back to our very early history, and the dominant colonial group consisted of Calvinist Puritans from England and Holland. And I want to actually read you one more time. Well, the Calvinists placed a huge emphasis on proper child rearing and education. Very, very number one for them. They were the ones to start the first schools in our country in the 1600s. They started our compulsory education system in the 1800s. The father of our compulsory school system was a guy named Horace Mann. His father was a Calvinist minister. And then it was the Calvinist ministers who wrote the first child-rearing manuals for parents. First ever. There was no such thing before that time. They would write them and publish them, and parents would read them and raise their kids accordingly. So, just to give you an idea of how negative their attitude toward children was, I have a couple of lovely quotes. This is from Cotton Mather, very influential Calvinist minister. So he said, "Are they young? Yet the devil has been with them already. They go astray as soon as they're born." Now here's a better one. This is from the Reverend Benjamin Wadsworth. At the time, he was the president of Harvard University. Babies, any babies? Yes, I hear one. Babies are filthy, guilty, odious, and abominable. They both by nature and by practice. So filthy, guilty, odious, abominable. You can't make this stuff up. This is what they said. So again, I don't know enough about Poland, or I don't know how it's played out here, but I can tell you, I know that in my country, this same deeply negative, it's still deeply ingrained in our culture. Okay, so now let's go down, but not really. No, at the psychological / physical level, okay, and I say slash because it gets the idea that there's any separation between these different levels or states. Again, it's an illusion. The mind, the body, our emotions, our spirit, it's all one interacting whole. But at that level, I want to draw from the work of the great Austrian psychologist Wilhelm Reich. How many have heard of him? Wilhelm Reich. A few. It's been a while. He was probably Freud's most influential and best known student. But it's been a while. I also forgot to ask. I meant to say that I never got to attend a school where I felt trusted or respected. Certainly, not even close. But I just wondered, how many of you were lucky enough to actually have gone to a school where you felt trusted and respected? 1 year? It's better than no years. Okay, well there's some hands. I wonder if you were lucky. Not me. Never once. Thankfully, my parents trusted me. I'm thankful for that. And I think that sort of reduced some of the damage that would have been otherwise. I really worry about kids, who were neither respected in school or at home and trusted. Because, they're probably going to lose respect for themselves somewhere along the way. And when we lacking self-respect leaves us vulnerable to all kinds of bad things that life can conjure up. So I just wanted to make sure to put that in. But anyway, Wilhelm Reich, one of the things that stood out about him was he was one of the first psychologists to say that psychology spent way too much time focusing on what's wrong with us. And that it was a much better idea to identify the things that keep us emotionally and mentally healthy, so that we won't ever need a psychologist. It's like that. He wasn't a child psychologist, but a big emphasis of his was always, we can prevent mental illness from happening when we raise kids, in psychologically healthy ways. So, unlike the Calvinists, Reich believed that every child is born with, at their core, is good, sociable, and what he called self-regulating. And by that he simply meant that kids know best what they need. They don't really need anyone else to tell them. But Reich said what happens is trauma, unmet emotional needs, and suppressing children's natural instincts, urges, their natural sexuality, all that stuff that the Christians are so worried about. But when those things happen, then a defensive sort of second layer forms around that beautiful, perfect core. And maybe his most important discovery, and he was absolutely the first to understand this, was that this doesn't just happen psychologically. That this defensive reaction, it happens on the physical level too. I hope this isn't too much, but I'll try to. So what happens in the body is that when we're raised in rigid, distrustful ways as children, the musculature in our bodies just starts to tighten, and it gets tighter and tighter. And this tight musculature, it literally doesn't feel, the things we're supposed to feel. It deadens feeling. It blocks feeling from happening. It's a very profound protective reaction. Wright actually called it armoring. It's a beautiful term because it's like we grow this shell. It's like a turtle shell that feels nothing but protects us. Right? Does that make sense? We okay so far? So this solves one problem, right? In a sense, it keeps us from feeling this inner conflict, but it causes another one. Because now, not only can't we feel, the uncomfortable feelings, but we can't really feel the good feelings either. It doesn't really. Those muscles don't select which feelings we feel and which feelings we don't feel, right? And then, we have about 4 steps here, but then, when good feelings are strong enough and they do manage to break through, because that's going to happen sometimes. Instead of feeling happiness and pleasure, we feel really anxious. It's kind of like if you do have a really tight muscle and something tickles it with a feather or something. It's like, stop. Very good. So that's how pleasure, we begin to experience pleasure that way as adults. Okay, so Wright, you're getting a Wilhelm Wright lesson today, but Wright called that pleasure anxiety. And then I'm going to get back to children. And then what happens is when armored adults not only feel threatened by their own good feelings and uncomfortable, they feel threatened and uncomfortable when they're around children and all of their natural joy and exuberance. And that's a real source of, I'd say that's not even a source, that goes beyond being a source of distrust. It's really a source of fear. But again, this is something that's happening at a very, it may not be, I may be speaking, I'm preaching to the converted here, but it's happening at a very deep level that most people aren't aware of. I'd say 99% of us are not aware that it's happening. But that makes it all the more powerful. Okay? So, I could talk, there's a lot more sources of distrust we could talk about. Particularly, we can talk about this current day obsession with safety and eliminating every risk from children's lives. Right? We could talk a long time about that. I wrote a whole book about that. But anyway, maybe you don't need to talk about it here anyway. So I think that's probably enough about the negative. Some of you are starting to look a little depressed. So. And besides, I think Wright was right. It's much better to focus on the positive. So let's go on to, should we trust children? Good question. So, again, I'm going to start at the spiritual level, just for consistency's sake. And here, I'm just going to speak personally. I don't have great spiritual knowledge. Personally, mind you, I'm a lifelong Christian, fairly deeply believing Christian. I believe that God creates every child with a soul that is filled with nothing but light and love. And that's it. And I've worked with children of every imaginable kind for over 40 years. And I have yet to meet a child that was born with darkness and negativity inside of them. That idea is the most ridiculous, outrageous idea ever thought. No, I totally agree with Wilhelm Wright. The trouble starts when children are mistrusted, when they're mistreated, or when they're misunderstood. And so, now on the philosophical level, the wise ancient Greeks, they had a wonderful idea. They believed that
wierzyli w to, że
we're all, not only are we born with a soul
nie tylko rodzi się
that has its unique destiny, its unique purpose, each one of us with a different one, but we're also born with an inner guide, kind of like a companion to the soul. And its job is to keep our soul on track. And if some obstacle comes between us and our real destiny and purpose, one way or another, the daimon gets us. Sometimes it'll kick you in the butt if it has to, but it gets you back on track. Yeah. Socrates reported that numerous times when he was at a real choice point in his life, that his daimon spoke out loud to him. Socrates. And I've actually had a few friends of mine say the same thing. Have any of you had that experience? Almost like a voice telling you, advising you, go this way, don't go that way. Okay, there's one. Never me. I've never heard voices. Thank you. I've never heard the voices. No, but I could tell you any number of times in my life, where if I look back, it really looks to me, and I believe that fate intervened, because I was getting distracted. I was getting off. I was losing touch with my purpose. Sometimes things quite unusual would happen to get me back where I was supposed to be. So, can I talk about your example? Oh, good. So we have an example right here of the daimon at work. Yeah, Sarah told me earlier, I was telling her what an amazing interpreter she is. And she said, well, I was born with this. But she said, I think she said, you correct me, she said, but I didn't know it. Until one day I was at a conference, and sort of one by one, all the interpreters fell over dead. I don't know, something happened to them all. They couldn't do it. And so Sarah said, oh, let me try. I think I might be able to do that. And she just immediately started doing what she's doing now. But unfortunately, the Greek word for happiness, actually, by the way, is eudaimonia. Eudaimonia. And that means, in English anyway, it means a well-pleased demon. Daimon, wow. A well-pleased daimon. That's a Freudian slip. Speaking of Freud. A well-pleased means your daimon is happy. That's what happiness means. Happiness means your inner guide is happy. Because you're on track. You're in touch with your purpose. But unfortunately, again, going back to those early Christian theologians who cooked up the idea of original sin, they were not well pleased by the idea that we should be trusted to follow our own inner guidance. So they literally changed the word daimon into demon. Okay? In English, all they had to do was take the A out. And from now on, you see that inner guide, that was a demon. If you heard something, that was the devil talking to you. It was a very fundamental change that happened 1,000 years after the Greeks came along. Does that make sense? So they just changed. They changed the word and the concept. Poof, just in one poof like that. Okay, so and that's depressing again. So let's so now I got depressed too. So now I want to connect that to education though, since that's what we're really here to talk about. Has everybody heard of Maria Montessori here? Has anybody not heard of Montessori? So No shame if you haven't heard of it.
To nie wstyd, jeżeli słyszeliście.
No, everyone's heard of it, so I don't have to say much.
Bo przecież każdy słyszał, to nie będę musiał wiedzieć.
You may not know that
Być może oni nie wiecie tego.
Montessori, the concept of the daimon,
Koncept daimonu
is actually one of the cornerstones. She wrote about it a lot. It's one of the cornerstones of her educational philosophy.
jej filozofii edukacji.
She didn't say daimon, she had a different word.
Nazwała tego
She's
daimonu,
Italian.
używała
Anyway,
jego
same idea.
ale nie brała
You know,
tego
and we know that Montessori absolutely believed
absolutnie
that children
że dzieci
are capable of directing their own learning.
zdolne
Right?
do
That's the
prowadzenia
baseline, bottom line of her approach. Because she believed children are born, every child is born with this powerful inner knowing that enables them to guide themselves, you know, throughout their entire educational journey. You know, Montessori said it was the teacher should follow the children's lead, right? Not the other way around. And really, the teacher's main job, and the way she trained her teachers, is just to be an observer. The teacher's supposed to be off here to the side, you know, just watching, present, and just available to her students if they get stuck, if they get too confused, whatever, they have a problem, then they can come to the teacher and get help. Otherwise, the teacher is just pretty much out of the picture. Let the daimon do its work. Now, what I especially liked about Montessori was she worked really hard to put together a scientific validation. You know, she was just a philosopher, but she was very scientifically minded herself. She was, you know, she was Italy's first female MD. You know that? Very amazing accomplishment in late 1800s. She became an MD, and then she became a teacher later. Her pediatrician work led her into education. But anyway, she's very science-minded, so she tried so hard, you know, to say this isn't just philosophy I'm talking about. This is really how kids do it. This is how learning happens. You know, but that information just wasn't available in the early 1900s. You know, it wouldn't be till much later in the century that scientists would have the, you know, really powerful observational tools, you know, to see how learning really happens and how development really happens. So, but today, you know, there's just a tremendous amount of research and a growing body of research, you know, that totally confirm Montessori was right.